So, we're now streaming live on Facebook. Hello, everyone, and sorry for the slight delay. So we're welcoming Dr. Susy Ridout, who's here to talk a little bit about her work and her book, and hopefully, Susy, you're up for introducing yourself. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I'm Susy Ridout. I'm an associate lecturer at Oxford Brookes University. I do a work portfolio, actually, so I'm also a mentor. I'm an author, and I'm a researcher, and I'm sure a whole load of other things. I do training too. But the areas that I cover are mainly autism, neurodivergence, and sexual violence. And I've recently published a book, which I'm very, very excited about. And that's what this evening is going to be based on, and tomorrow as well, if you're going to be able to join us for the workshop. So the book is Neurodiversity, Autism, and Recovery from Sexual Violence. And the beautiful illustrations are by Catherine Haywood, who is someone who illustrates for me, and if you ever need an illustrator, is someone I suggest you access, if not directly through me. So that's probably a bit about me, really. Over to you, Sarah.
Amazing. So when we were working out a title for this, we called it Reclaiming Your Voice, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that signifies for you.
Yes, reclaiming my voice in relation to this book, really, and my experiences, because I am a neurodivergent victim survivor of sexual violence, and those are the words that I choose to use to relate to me. And I'm very aware that other people will and do use different terminology, and that's absolutely okay, and it is as it should be, because we normally have terminology imposed on us, and that can actually prevent us from talking about our experiences, which are really heavily based in trauma. So reclaiming my voice was about owning my experiences, being able to talk about them in the way that I wanted to who I wanted to, and when I wanted to, and how I wanted to. And that was really important to me. I also wanted to have my experiences validated and listened to and heard. So reclaiming my voice was all about packaging that. So also it was about being acknowledged as a victim of sexual violence who's been traumatized, rather than someone who is, as mental health services so aptly put it, mad.
Thank you. Thank you. That's given me a lot to think about. Yeah, so then I wonder about the workshop tomorrow and the title, which is Rebuilding Your Life. I wonder if you could explain a little bit about where that comes from.
Yeah, so after being subjected to rape or sexual violence, abuse, those sorts of things, people's recovery journey is completely different because we're unique. And so it's important that any support that we get sees us as unique and as our journeys being very, very diverse. So for me, rebuilding my life acknowledged that the incident that I actually took to court, there were other incidents, but the one that I took to court, it was a historic incident, but actually the whole court process is one that sincerely needs to be changed, because it doesn't really support victims in the best possible way. So rebuilding my life is being able to move on from that, and having the court experience actually was sort of very like reliving a lot of the event for me, because let's face it, defense barristers are not going to be the cheeriest of people, and they're going to be people who are really focused on painting you as the worst possible person and as someone who is to blame, who is making this up. And so I was so angry, so confused, so frustrated that I couldn't think properly. I had so many thoughts whooshing around in my head, and I wanted to be able to express myself, because expressing myself in court was the first time I'd ever talked about the incident. So being able to talk about it following that, I was adamant that I was going to be an individual who wasn't defined by rape, who was able to express myself about that, and that was going to form the bottom line in terms of rebuilding my life. So what I did was I actually drew on part of my doctoral research, part of my mentoring work, and started doing collage and things like that. You know, not necessarily as a means to being the best pieces of artwork, but as a way of processing thoughts, and then eventually being able to put words to what I was feeling like, and being able to separate out thoughts and feelings, sensory experiences, and things like that. And that's something I'm going to come on to perhaps later on in the talk today, being able to separate out sensory experiences. So part of rebuilding my life as well was also about being able to educate other people. So being able to be confident in who I am, and being able to educate people and say to them, you know, we are unique, we're suffering from trauma, we're not crazy people, you know, our feelings are justified, and society and individuals in society need to acknowledge that and recognize that, and the whole court process needs to acknowledge and recognize that. So being able to frame my experience as the expert insider was and is a paramount part of rebuilding my life, because, you know, let's face it, does that journey ever end? You know, for some people, they may say, yes, it does. You know, I get to a point and I feel that I've rebuilt my life, and other people might say that's going to be something that I will be continuing for the rest of my life. And we're all different. So.
Thank you. I should say as well that I am keeping an eye out for anybody posing any questions. If we have time, I will ask Susy questions that come up during the chat. So I can see that we've got a few folk watching. So just do feel free. I can see people have pressed like, which is brilliant. But yeah, just if you do have any questions that I haven't formulated myself, then please do pop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to ask them if we have time. So I wonder, Susy, if you could tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to write your book. Would you mind going into that a bit? I'm really fascinated with anybody who's written a book. I always think it's so impressive anyway.
I really felt it was important, on the basis of my experience, that practitioners in particular understood why it was important to not make assumptions about my experiences, not gaslight what I was saying to them, because I actually was shoved into the mental health system and passed through the hands of 13 different mental health practitioners. And every single one of them, I said to them, I have been raped. And every single one of them wrote that down, because I've looked at my medical records. Every single one of them wrote that down. Not one of them offered safeguarding. Not one of them, because I have children, not one of them said to me, have you reported this to the police? Would you like support with this? Would you like support being signposted to a specialist service? No one did that. Everyone assumed that I needed to be embedded in a mental health service that was going to see me as dysfunctional, maybe subject me to medication to calm me down, so that was going to dampen my thoughts and processes, so I wouldn't be able to make sense of them, make meaning of them, which is a really critical part of your recovery. You need to be able to understand your own experiences. So if you have that all dampened down, or other people imposing their own terminology or dismissing part of your narrative, it becomes really, really difficult. So I was exposed, on top of the trauma of being raped, I was exposed to layer upon layer upon layer of additional trauma at the hands of mental health practitioners, which is absolutely disgraceful. And just only points to the fact that these people need to be trained. They need to be trained in autism awareness. They need to be trained in rape awareness. They need to be trained in how to work with rape survivors. They need to be trained in linking in with other services, including specialist services. There's so many things that they need to be trained in. And I'm not saying that every single mental health practitioner is a bad practitioner, but I am saying I came across 13 and they all were. So that was enough for me. So should I ever need mental health support in the future, that's not something that's actually going to encourage me to access that. And that's really detrimental, because it does compromise your health access, your health support in the future. And I think that sets people up for really sort of quite, I don't know, comprised, no, what's the word I want? It compromises your health support. I also wanted people to know that the activities that I've included in my book are adaptable to individuals, because my experience with the mental health service is that they all sort of saw me in the same way, and as individual practitioners, I'd have expected them at least to do me the justice of seeing me in 13 different ways. But they didn't, because they all followed the story of the first person. And the activities that I've got included in this book allow people to adapt them all according to their own needs. So be you a victim survivor, working either on your own or with a support worker, whether you're a practitioner working to support a victim survivor, you know, I would urge you to look at them and think, well, is this someone that works for me, something that works for me? Can it be something that I can adjust, can adapt, improve on? Because I'm not saying they're necessarily the best. I'm just saying these are the ones that I've used for me. So that's what's included lots in this book. So I've also provided lots of activities which will help people with their well-being, or various aspects of their well-being. And the ones I've included were ones that I drew on in relation to mine in the earlier stages of my recovery. So I'm well aware that there will be a lot of other activities out there, and I would encourage other people to use those. And I think that sort of answers that part of the question, really. I've made notes here so that I don't try and miss things out. That's why I'm looking down here a lot.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah, I do think it's good to know that the things in the book are sort of tried and tested, you know, that it's not just kind of pulled out of the air. That it sounds like there's been a lot of work that's gone into testing out what you've put in there.
Yeah, I mean, every single thing that is in that book is something that I've tried and tested on me in a range of ways, really. So, yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about who might find the book useful.
Well, quite simply, everyone, because sexual violence, rape, abuse, everything like that has absolutely no boundaries. So probably every single one of us, we know one in three people is a victim survivor, and we will know people, whether or not we're aware of it, because a lot of people don't talk about it. You know, the word rape is a dirty word, the word sexual violence, sexual abuse, you know, so we don't talk about it, and we need to talk about it far often. So it's useful for everybody. It's useful for victim survivors and those who support us. It's and those who should support us, actually. It's useful for anyone in the criminal justice system, police as well, specialist services, universities, because rape on campus is huge at the moment. So universities particularly, social care, educationalists, researchers, all of those, everybody.
So it sounds a bit like, with regard to practitioners, it might be a useful resource for anyone that's thinking about how to approach a trauma-informed workplace from a kind of intersectional perspective. So bringing in the needs of people with additional needs, if that makes sense. That's very clumsy.
Yes, I mean, absolutely, because the book is written that, like, if you could go through the book and you wouldn't be able to say whether it's written for Black people, gay people, gender non-conforming. You wouldn't be able to say. It is all encompassing. It's very inclusive. That was my intention. I would love to hear from people who think it isn't, because that was my aim. So I think that practitioners should be able to use that with absolutely anyone. And also, yes, the activities can be used with people with learning disabilities as well. And I think to that extent, it probably is one of the books that would be very well, I don't know, situated, if you like, because it does target that audience as well as a wider audience.
And I think the language is very
the
clear.
question. I sort of got a bit lost in it.
Yeah, it was a surprise question. But yeah, I think that the language in the book is very clear. It's like some of the practitioner targeting sort of books that I've read have been very jargony and very kind of, I don't know, it's like setting practitioners up here and then everybody else somewhere else. And this book doesn't do that.
No, I mean, something I really try hard not to do, because I don't like jargon myself, and I think if people are talking about me, I need to be able to understand them. And I think if you're talking about people who are traumatized, very often our heads are spinning anyway if we're traumatized. So the last thing we want is someone coming in with acronyms and jargon and all sorts of things, because we just don't understand what people are talking about. And if you go into the court experience, then that's full of a whole load of terminology that, you know, by dint of what that experience is, you have to sort of go along with. But it helps to be able to state your case and who you are and things like that in the terminology, using the terminology that you want.
Absolutely. So thinking more about what's in there for women that we might work with, what would be a strategy or a technique from your book that women might be able to try on their own?
Okay, well, I wrote down a couple, I think, and then I changed them earlier on today. So one, I think, would be a memory box, because I think many people then get stuck with ideas that the past has never been good. And for many people, I'm aware that that might actually be the case. So where you choose to start your memory is entirely up to you as an individual. Your memory is 5 minutes ago, or it is from today, or it's from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But within that memory box, and you can do a literal box, you can do it on the computer in a computer folder, whatever works for you. So it's to do with your communication preference, if you like. So putting in cuttings, photographs, thoughts, ideas, bits of poetry, writing, if you like writing, some drawings, music, if you've got ways of putting music on a pen drive, or if you're doing it on the computer, just doing a playlist. So a number of different ways. And so I think a memory box is a really nice activity, and it's something that you can do over time and build up, and you can look back on. It's also something that if you've got children, you can get them to do their own, or you can do one together with them. So I think that's a really nice inclusive activity. I would also say that because rape and sexual violence, you know, yes, they impact on the individual, but the wider impact on the family is such that, you know, very often you might want to include this sort of activity so that other people can dip into it and add, you know, you design the box that's going to suit you. So you might have a family, a wider family, sort of dipping in and contributing ideas and thoughts and things like that. So I quite like that idea because it's very, very flexible, very adaptable. Another one that I like is about breathing and body awareness. Now, I'm very aware throughout the whole decade plus of my mentoring, and for even longer than when I've been doing dance work, that most of us are incredibly unaware of our bodies. So when we're in times of trauma, talking about how we're feeling can be that much harder. So part of my book is, with some lovely illustrations by Catherine, is to do with this. So it's about body awareness and it's to do with breathing. Now, where you've got this prone figure, you can actually do the activity sitting down on a chair. You can do it standing up. You can do it at the bus stop if you like, because no one's going to know except you. But in a way, what it is about making you very aware of what your body feels like and what your breathing is like. And it's a very good technique if you're someone who gets anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and things like that, and being able to understand where you're getting sensations in your body. So basically, how I talk people through this is telling them that there's 3 different parts that you breathe from, essentially. So if you're breathing with your hand up here, and you can feel this part rising, you've got this, that's very like a dog panting. So that's where the dog would be panting from. If your chest is feeling very tight, so if you've got your hand on your chest, so I've got my hand on my chest there. So if your chest is feeling very tight, as our chests often do, if we're feeling anxious and getting very stressed, you'll find that you're breathing mainly down to your chest, and your hand, you'd be able to see that rising and falling. That's where you're breathing into. But if you're doing the most effective breathing, if you put your hand on your abdomen, then you should see your hand rise and fall. Now, this is the sort of breathing that a baby does, you know, when you see them lying in a crib with their arms wide, sort of open like that, and, you know, their belly is just going up and down. So if you adopt that sort of breathing and practice it on a daily basis, so you get very used to where your breathing is and understanding where your breathing is. So if you get a tight chest, be aware that you can actually change your breathing, move it up to a higher position and start panting, and then move it back down to the chest position, and then move it back down to the lower position. And getting used to moving your breathing is something that's really going to help you in moments of panic. So then moving on from that, you can combine it with tensing and releasing different muscle groups. So you can sort of tense your jaw and go like that, and then wiggle it around a bit. I'm aware that you can all see me and have a laugh, but I can't see you. But anyway, so tensing your jaw, wiggling it, screwing up your face, and then relaxing it. You relax all of your muscles. So that's a really important way of just getting rid of that tension. You can sort of shrug up your shoulders and then just drop them and wiggle them around. And again, all the time you're doing this and breathing, you're helping yourself deal with moments when you start to get very panicky. And if you shrug your shoulders and then drop them, and then you're tightening your fists as well. So you've got your fists tightened, and then relax your fists. So you've got your hands all floppy, and then you raise your shoulders and then drop them, but your hands are floppy as well. So you've worked down from your head, you've done your breathing, or you're still doing your breathing, hopefully deep breathing, and you've done your shoulders right down to your hands. So just that bit on its own is something you can do at a bus stop. You can do it sitting in a chair like I am. You can do it lying on the floor. whichever. But just that technique, if you did it once every day, will get you used to being able to handle and have control of panic attacks, anxiety attacks, things like that. So if you're doing it when you're calm, in moments when something suddenly happens to trigger your anxiety or panic, you should have more control over your breathing and your body and be able to bring it under control. So those are just 2 techniques.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So one more question. I realized that half an hour is kind of flying by. I'm really looking forward to the workshop tomorrow, because it feels like, yeah, we could just talk about this sort of thing for quite a long time. Thank you. So last question is, well, this is an observation actually. One of the things that comes across strongly in your book is the importance of sensory experiences and how they affect us. And I wondered whether that was an idea that's well understood currently by support practitioners working with women who've experienced trauma.
I don't think it is. I think every single one of the mental health practitioners who I had anything to do with didn't understand that at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the experience that I did. The specialist service who I worked with, I thought were extremely good. The extent to which you need that support, I think probably every service could do with, unless they've got autistic practitioners working within them, could do with a reminder that we could be, as neurodivergent people, autistic people, we could be more hyper or hyposensitive. Anyway, that could be our norm. But following sexual violence, that could be even more so. And you could argue, yes, that any traumatized person is going to be like that. And I would agree. I would also argue that probably with this section of the population, neurodivergent people, autistic people, our experiences, sensory experiences, are likely to fall farther outside the bounds of those of non-autistic, non-neurodivergent people. So I have another activity which I sort of did. I'm not sure if I did it in the book. I've described it actually in the book. So I was describing lots of different feelings just by putting words on paper, and I was just linking them up. So I was just mapping out some of my thoughts, feelings, and senses. Just to get those out of my head, because everything was spinning in my head and I couldn't express myself. When I saw that, there was quite a lot on there, but a practitioner looking at that could engage with you and ask you questions. Why have you linked that to this? Why have you linked that to this? So that can help start a conversation and inform a conversation. But you might want to separate it out a little bit more. So on different days I did. So I've got one which is like that. It's got a little bit more to do with sensory stuff. But also I've got things like fear in there. I've got fidgeting in there as well. And all of this sort of leads as well, rather horrifically, to low self-confidence. But that was how I did it one day. Another day I've got this, because I was looking at more sort of cognitive stuff. So I've got memory, poor concentration, and things like that. And then I've got another one, which again draws together senses and cognitive stuff. So I've got memory, I've got, I think I've got light, and I've read it the wrong way around. Light, sound, I've got anxiety in there, memory. So I'm linking different things together in different ways. And every time I do that, that helps me process and make sense or meaning of my experiences, my sensory experiences, my cognitive experiences, and my emotions. And anyone working to support me or to support someone else can use that to ask you questions. Well, you could do that every single day, a certain number of times a day, a certain number of times a week, and it will change according to how you feel, according to how the context is, and you can see how things improve or change over time. They might get worse as well before they get better, but it's a very useful tool for talking and shaping conversation. And very often, I think, if you've got a practitioner who is at a loss, so I'm thinking about mental health practitioners, about things to ask you which would be useful, this sort of tool would be very good.
Fantastic, thank you. So we just had one question, and it's just about which book it is. So can you show us your book again, please, and talk us through the title so that people can look it up if they want to.
Okay, so this is the book, Neurodiversity, Autism and Recovery from Sexual Violence.
Fab.
It is published by Pavilion Publishing and Media, if you go onto their website. For anyone who wants to access this book, who is accessing the workshop tomorrow, and also probably if you've accessed the webinar tonight, you get a 20% discount, but that needs to be provided via Amina, which Sarah will have access to that. Also with this book, I self-published it earlier, about this time last year. So you've got the 7 chapters in this book written in 7 different booklets, which are on my self-publishing website, Lulu. So you can get them for that. So they were particularly written for people who had a smaller budget. If you're a practitioner, I would urge you to get this book because it's got hints and tips at the end of every single chapter for practitioners to focus on when they're working with neurodivergent or autistic people in particular, and actually generally, really.
Fantastic. And just to mention to everyone that the discount ends on Sunday. So if you do want to get in touch with us about that, I would recommend you do it quite quickly. So thank you so much, Susy, for coming and chatting to us. And again, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. So yeah, I just really appreciate you coming and sharing all of that with us. Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
So say goodbye to everybody now. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.